Daniel Harper stood frozen in the doorway of Romano's restaurant, his heart sinking as he recognized the setup. Across the candlelit table sat a woman he'd never met, Laura Bennett, clutching a photo that matched his dating profile, a profile he'd never created. Behind a nearby planter, 3 pairs of guilty eyes watched. His 8-year-old triplet daughters, Emma, Sophie, and Lily, their harmless experiment unraveling in real time. Within minutes, Laura would storm out humiliated, the girls would be discovered sobbing, and Daniel would face an impossible choice. Let a stranger think he'd cruelly stood her up, or admit his dead wife's daughters were so desperate to see him happy again, they'd resorted to deception. Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if this opening grabbed you, hit that like button and stick around until the end. Trust me, you won't see where this goes. The January rain hammered against the windows of the Harper household with the kind of relentless rhythm that matched Daniel Harper's life for the past 2 years, constant, gray, and utterly predictable. He stood at the kitchen counter, methodically preparing 3 identical lunch boxes: turkey sandwich, apple slices, granola bar, juice box. Everything in threes. Everything the same. Emma's box, Sophie's box, Lily's box, his daughters, his entire world. The triplets sat at the kitchen table in their matching purple pajamas. Though Emma had rolled her sleeves up, Sophie had buttoned hers wrong, and Lily wore hers backward because she insisted the tag scratched her neck. 8 years old and already so distinctly themselves, even when they tried to be identical. "Dad, you're cutting the crusts in rectangles again," Emma observed, pushing her glasses up her nose. "Mrs. Bennett says triangles have better structural integrity for sandwich consumption." Daniel paused mid-cut. "Mrs. Bennett teaches 2nd grade, not engineering." "She's really smart, though," Sophie chimed in, swinging her legs under the chair. "She knows everything about everything. She even knows about stars and planets, and she said Pluto should still be a planet, and I agree." "She's also really pretty," Lily added, her voice carrying that particular 8-year-old blend of innocence and calculation. "Don't you think, Dad?" Daniel didn't look up. He'd learned to recognize landmines in conversation. "I'm sure she is. Finish your cereal." The girls exchanged glances, those silent conversations that identical triplets seemed to have in a language beyond words. Daniel had watched his late wife, Catherine, and her twin sister do the same thing. It used to fascinate him. Now it just made his chest tight. Catherine. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days since the accident. Not that he was counting anymore. Except he was. Every single day. "I heard Mrs. Chen telling Mrs. Rodriguez that you never smile anymore," Emma said quietly, her scientist's mind always probing, always analyzing. "She said you used to smile all the time before Mom." The kitchen went silent except for the rain and the hum of the refrigerator. Daniel set down the knife. "I smile." "Not really," Sophie said, her artistic soul seeing things others missed. "Not like in the videos. We watched the Christmas videos from when Mom was alive, and you smiled different. It was bigger, it reached your eyes." "Your current smile only reaches your mouth," Lily concluded. "It's a sad smile pretending to be happy." Daniel felt something crack inside his chest, that same fracture that kept breaking and never quite healing. His daughters were 8. They should be worried about homework and playground politics, not their father's emotional well-being. "I'm okay, girls. Really." He forced that smile they'd just criticized. "We're all okay." Another exchanged glance. Another silent conversation. "Okay, Dad," Emma said, but her tone suggested she was filing this information away for later analysis. The school run was its own kind of meditation. Familiar streets, familiar routes, familiar silence broken only by the girls' chatter in the back seat. Daniel had become an expert at half-listening, offering appropriate responses at appropriate intervals while his mind drifted to the endless checklist that governed his days. Work, groceries, bills, laundry, permission slips, parent-teacher conferences, dentist appointments, everything that kept a household running, that kept 3 growing girls clothed and fed and safe. Safe. That was all that mattered now. Keep them safe. Keep them close. Don't let anything else happen. "Dad, you missed the turn," Emma announced. Daniel blinked, realizing he'd driven past Meadowbrook Elementary on autopilot, his mind somewhere else entirely. Sorry, distracted. You're always distracted, Sophie said, not unkindly. Mrs. Bennet says mindfulness is important for mental health. Mrs. Bennet says a lot of things, Daniel muttered, making a U-turn. That's because she's wise, Lily declared, and kind. And she lost her husband too, so she understands about being sad. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd heard about Laura Bennet, the young widow teaching second grade, raising her daughter alone. The school community had a way of collecting its broken people, giving them sympathetic looks in the hallways, inviting them to support groups Daniel always declined. He didn't want to share his grief with strangers. He barely wanted to acknowledge it himself. All right, troublemakers, out you go. He pulled up to the drop-off lane, and the girls gathered their backpacks, their lunchboxes, their matching enthusiasm for a day he'd spend counting hours until he could pick them up again. Emma paused at the door. Dad, we love you. Even when you're sad, Sophie added. Especially when you are sad, Lily concluded. And then they were gone, 3 purple backpacks disappearing into the crowd of children, leaving Daniel alone with the rain and the radio and the hollow feeling that had taken up permanent residence in his chest. Work was a mercy because it required nothing of him emotionally. Harper and Associates accounting wasn't glamorous, but numbers made sense. Numbers had rules. Numbers didn't die in car accidents on rainy Tuesday afternoons, leaving you alone with 3 8-year-old girls and a house full of memories. Daniel, you have a call on line 2, his assistant Margaret announced through the intercom. It's Diane. Diane, Catherine's mother. His mother-in-law, who'd lost her only daughter and somehow still managed to show up every Sunday with groceries and gentle insistence that life continued. Thanks, Margaret. He picked up the phone. Hi, Diane. Don't hi Diane me like you're fine, she said immediately, her voice warm but firm. I'm calling about Thursday. Daniel frowned, scanning his mental calendar. Thursday? The school renovation meeting at Romano's, 6 o'clock. The girls told me you'd forgotten, so I'm reminding you. Daniel pulled up his calendar on the computer. Nothing. What renovation meeting? The one about the library expansion. Daniel, the girls said you got the email last week. They were very specific about it. Something nagged at the edge of Daniel's awareness, but he couldn't quite grasp it. Emma, Sophie, and Lily had been unusually insistent about him checking his email lately. I must have missed it. Is this mandatory? According to the girls, yes. Parent input is essential. Diane paused. Daniel, when was the last time you actually engaged with the school community? I attend parent-teacher conferences. You attend and say nothing. You volunteer for nothing. You participate in nothing. Her voice softened. Honey, I know it's hard, but those girls need to see you living, not just existing. I'm doing my best, Diane. I know you are. And your best is keeping them fed and safe and loved. But maybe it's time to do a little more. For them. For yourself. After they hung up, Daniel sat staring at his computer screen, that nagging feeling growing stronger. He opened his email, searching for anything about a school meeting. Nothing in his inbox. Nothing in spam. His desk phone rang again. It's me again, Diane said. And before you say anything, I'm going to be very clear. Go to that meeting Thursday night. Get dressed in something other than those horrible khakis you've been wearing for 3 years. Comb your hair. Be a human being in the world for 2 hours. Diane, Catherine would want you to try, Daniel. Not to forget her, never to forget her, but to try. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true and terrible and completely unfair. Catherine would want him to try. She'd said as much in those final months of her pregnancy, when complications had started appearing, when doctors had started using words like risky and complicated. If anything happens, she'd whispered one night, her hand on her swollen belly where 3 daughters grew. Promise me you'll keep living, really living, not just surviving. He'd promised. Of course he'd promised. You promise anything in moments like that, never believing you'll have to keep those promises. I'll go to the meeting, he told Diane quietly. Good. And Daniel, wear the blue shirt, the one Catherine bought you for your anniversary. You look good in blue. Thursday arrived with the kind of speed that only happened when you were dreading something. Daniel had successfully pushed the meeting from his mind for 2 days. focusing instead on the comfortable routine of work and parenting and the careful emotional numbness he'd cultivated. But the girls hadn't forgotten. "You need to leave by 5:30 to get there on time," Emma announced at breakfast, consulting a schedule she'd apparently created. "Traffic will be moderate and parking at Romano's can be challenging." "Romano's?" Daniel frowned. "I thought this was at the school." "The school cafeteria is being renovated," Sophie explained smoothly. "That's why they're having the renovation meeting at a restaurant. It makes sense if you think about it." "It makes no sense," Daniel countered. "Mrs. Bennett helped organize it," Lily added. "She's very organized and thoughtful, and she'll probably be there." Daniel caught that last part, the emphasis just a shade too strong, but he was running late for work, and the girls were running late for school, and there wasn't time to interrogate 8-year-olds about their motivations. "Fine, I'll be there. Now eat your breakfast." By 5 o'clock, Daniel was regretting every decision that had led to this moment. He stood in his bedroom, staring at the blue shirt Diane had mentioned, the one Catherine had given him for their 7th anniversary, saying it matched his eyes and made him look like a dad who could still be mistaken for handsome. He hadn't worn it since the funeral. His hand trembled as he pulled it from the closet. It still smelled faintly of her perfume, or maybe that was his imagination, his desperate brain conjuring memories from molecules that couldn't possibly remain after 2 years. "Dad, you look really good!" Lily shouted from the hallway. All 3 girls had positioned themselves outside his bedroom door, apparently supervising his preparation like tiny fashion consultants. "The blue really brings out your eyes," Emma observed clinically. "You should wear cologne," Sophie suggested. "Not too much, just a little." Daniel narrowed his eyes at them. "Why are you 3 so invested in this meeting?" "We just want you to make a good impression on the other parents," Emma said. "First impressions are important for community integration," Sophie added. "And Mrs. Bennett will be there," Lily concluded. "And she's really important to us, so we want her to think you're cool." "I'm a 42-year-old accountant going to a school meeting. Nobody's going to think I'm cool." "Not with that attitude," Emma muttered. Daniel arrived at Romano's at exactly 6 o'clock, which was already suspicious because Romano's was an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, not the kind of place you'd hold a school meeting unless the PTA budget had dramatically improved. The hostess greeted him with a knowing smile that made his stomach drop. "Reservation name?" "I'm here for the Meadowbrook Elementary meeting." Her smile widened. "Of course. Right this way." She led him through the restaurant, past couples on date nights, past business dinners, past anniversary celebrations, to a table set for 2 in a quiet corner. A very romantic quiet corner, with candles, and a single rose in a vase. Daniel's heart began to pound. "I think there's been a mistake." "Daniel Harper?" a woman's voice asked behind him. He turned to find a woman in her mid-30s standing there, dark hair falling past her shoulders, wearing a blue dress that matched the nervous hope in her eyes. She was beautiful in that effortless way some people achieved, but more than that, she looked kind, gentle, real. "I'm Laura Bennett," she said, extending her hand. "It's so nice to finally meet you. The girls have told me so much about you." The girls, his girls, the renovation meeting, the insistence on the blue shirt. Oh no. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Daniel began, his voice rough with panic. Laura's smile faltered. "A misunderstanding? I didn't—" He couldn't form words, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the magnitude of what his daughters had done. "I thought this was a school meeting." Her face went pale. "What?" "About renovations. The library expansion. I thought—" "You didn't know about the date?" Her voice had gone very quiet, very careful. "What date?" "I don't date. I never—" "Who told you?" Laura pulled out her phone with shaking hands, opening what appeared to be a dating app. There, on the screen, was Daniel's face, his information. His interests, except he'd never listed any interests because he'd never created a profile, because he'd never agreed to any of this. "Your daughters," Laura whispered, and he could see the moment she understood, the moment humiliation crashed over her like a wave. "Oh my God, your daughters matched us. They messaged me for weeks. They sent me your picture and stories about you, and they said you were ready to meet someone." Daniel felt the restaurant spinning around him. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. I would never. I haven't dated since. I'm not ready for. Of course you're not. Laura's voice cracked, and she was backing away from the table, from him, from this entire nightmare scenario. I'm so stupid. I actually thought, God, I'm so stupid. You're not stupid. This isn't your fault. My daughters, they wanted their dad to be happy. I understand. I have a daughter too. Laura stopped, tears threatening to spill over. I'm sorry, I need to go. I need to. Please let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Mr. Harper. You're a grieving widower who isn't ready to date, and I'm an idiot who let 3 8-year-olds convince me that someone might actually want to have dinner with me. She grabbed her purse. Please give the girls my regards, and tell them I understand, but I can't teach their class anymore. I'll request a transfer. Wait, no, that's not necessary. But Laura was already walking away, her shoulders rigid with humiliation, and Daniel was left standing by a table set for two, holding a future he'd never asked for and watching it disappear toward the exit. That's when he heard it, a small choked sob from behind the hostess stand. He turned, and his heart shattered completely. Emma, Sophie, and Lily stood huddled together, partially hidden behind a large decorative plant, their faces streaked with tears and terror. They'd been watching. They'd been waiting for their plan to work, for their father to smile again, for the magic to happen. Instead, they'd watched it fall apart. Girls? Daniel's voice came out strangled. Emma stepped forward, her glasses fogged with tears. We're sorry. We're so sorry. We just wanted you to be happy, Sophie sobbed. We thought if you met someone nice like Mrs. Bennet, you'd remember how to smile for real, Lily whispered, her small face crumpling. We didn't mean to ruin everything. Daniel looked at his 3 daughters, his whole world, his reason for breathing, and felt every wall he'd built around his grief crack wide open. They'd been so desperate to fix him that they'd resorted to deception. They'd watched him fade so completely into gray routine that they'd taken action, the way children do when adults fail to solve problems. And in trying to help, they'd humiliated a kind woman who'd probably been just as lonely, just as broken, just as desperate for connection. Stay here, Daniel said quietly. Don't move. He ran. Through Romano's, past startled diners, out into the January rain that had returned with a vengeance. He spotted Laura standing under the restaurant's awning, phone pressed to her ear, mascara running, trying desperately to compose herself enough to call a ride. Laura, please wait. She turned, and the devastation on her face nearly brought him to his knees. Mr. Harper, please just let me go. I can't. He stopped a few feet away, rain soaking through the blue shirt Catherine had bought him. I can't let you think this was anything other than what it was. 3 little girls who love their dad so much they tried to fix something they don't understand is broken. It doesn't matter. It does matter. Because you didn't deserve that. Any of that. Daniel ran his hands through his wet hair, searching for words he hadn't had to use in years. My wife died 2 years ago. Car accident. She was coming home from a doctor's appointment. She'd had some complications with the pregnancy, with the girls, and a truck ran a red light, and she never came home. Laura's expression softened, pain recognizing pain. I haven't dated. I haven't thought about dating. I barely remember how to be a person some days. I just survive. For them. Because they need me to. I know, Laura said softly. I know exactly what that's like. The girls told me about your husband. Pancreatic cancer, 15 months ago. He was 39. She wiped at her eyes. Our daughter, Maya, is 7. She's been asking me why I don't smile anymore either. They stood in the rain, 2 broken people connected by loss and the well-meaning manipulation of their children. They mean well, Daniel said finally. The girls. They're not cruel. They're just scared, Laura finished. Scared their parents forgot how to be happy. Yeah. A long silence broken only by rain and distant traffic and the weight of everything they weren't saying. I should go, Laura said, but she didn't move. The girls are inside, crying, terrified they've ruined everything. Daniel met her eyes. Would you consider meeting them, just for a moment, So they can apologize, so they can see that you're okay, that this didn't destroy you? Laura hesitated, and he could see her weighing options, calculating the emotional cost. I'll understand if you say no, Daniel added quickly. This is already so far beyond. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I'll meet them. But then I really do need to go. This is too much for one night. They walked back inside together, two strangers bound by grief and the chaos of children who loved too desperately. The hostess looked between them with confused sympathy, and Daniel felt the absurdity of the entire situation settle over him like a heavy coat. The girls were exactly where he'd left them, huddled behind the plant, holding each other and crying quietly enough not to disturb the other diners. Girls, Daniel said gently. Three identical faces looked up, eyes red and swollen, hope and terror warring in their expressions. This is Mrs. Bennet, Daniel continued. I think you owe her an apology. Emma stepped forward first, always the brave one, always leading even when afraid. Mrs. Bennet, we're really, really sorry. We didn't mean to make you sad or embarrassed or upset. We thought if Dad met someone nice like you, he'd be happy again. Sophie joined her, artistic fingers twisting together. We made the profile and wrote all his favorite things and picked the best pictures, and everyone who matched with him wasn't right. But then we found you, and you seemed perfect. You're a teacher, and you're smart, and you lost someone too, so we thought you'd understand Dad, Lily finished, her voice barely above a whisper. We thought maybe you could be friends, or more than friends. We just wanted Dad to smile like he used to. Laura knelt down, bringing herself to their level, and Daniel watched something shift in her expression. The anger and humiliation giving way to something softer, something that understood. Girls, she said gently, what you did was wrong. You created a profile without your dad's permission. You pretended to be him. You set up a date he didn't know about. That's called deception. And even when it comes from love, it can hurt people. Three heads nodded, tears streaming. But I also understand why you did it, Laura continued, and her own voice cracked. My daughter Maya, she's been doing things like this too. Little things. Setting extra places at dinner, asking if I want to go to the park where we used to go with her daddy, trying to make me remember how to be happy. Did it work? Emma asked, ever the scientist seeking data. Sometimes, Laura admitted, and sometimes it just makes me sad because I remember everything I lost. That's how Dad is, Sophie said. He's sad all the time but pretends he's not. I'm right here, Daniel muttered, but without heat. Laura stood, brushing off her dress, and looked at him with eyes that had seen the same darkness. Mr. Harper, Daniel, please. Daniel. She took a breath. This was a lot. For both of us. And I still need to process everything that happened tonight. But your daughters aren't bad kids. They're scared kids who love their father very much. They ambushed you. They tried to help me, Laura corrected. In the worst possible way, yes, but their hearts were in the right place. She looked at the girls again. I'll stay in your class. I won't transfer. But we need to have a serious talk about boundaries and appropriate behavior, okay? Okay, the triplets chorused, relief flooding their faces. And as for you, Laura said to Daniel, maybe consider actually checking your email from now on. Apparently your daughters have been running an entire matchmaking operation under your nose. Despite everything, the chaos, the humiliation, the emotional devastation, Daniel felt his lips twitch. Almost a real smile. I'll do that, he promised. Laura gathered her purse, called her ride, and prepared to leave. But at the door she paused and turned back. Daniel, for what it's worth, if you ever do decide you're ready to have coffee with someone who understands, you have my number, apparently. And then she was gone, disappearing into the rainy night, leaving Daniel standing in Romano's with 3 guilty daughters and a chest full of feelings he hadn't felt in 2 years. Terror, confusion, embarrassment, and underneath it all, buried so deep he almost didn't recognize it, the faintest spark of possibility. The ride home was silent except for the rain and the occasional sniffle from the back seat. Daniel didn't lecture, didn't yell, didn't say anything at all until they were home, wet and exhausted, standing in the kitchen where this had all begun. Sit, he said quietly, The girls sat at the table, identical faces wearing identical expressions of remorse and fear. Daniel pulled out a chair and sat across from them. I'm not angry. You should be, Emma whispered. Maybe, but I'm not. Because I understand why you did it. He looked at each of them in turn. You were trying to fix something you thought was broken. Me. You are broken, Sophie said softly. We all are. We miss Mom. I know, baby. I know you do. But you're the most broken, Lily added. You don't laugh anymore. You don't listen to music. You don't do anything except work and take care of us. You forgot how to be dad. The words hit him like physical blows, each one landing true. You're right, Daniel said, his voice rough. I did forget. I've been so focused on keeping you safe, on making sure nothing else bad happens, that I forgot you need more than safe. You need happy. We need you to be happy, Emma corrected, even if it's without Mom, even if it hurts. We need to know you can still smile for real. Daniel felt tears burning behind his eyes. The first real tears since the funeral, since he'd locked everything down to survive. What you did tonight was wrong. You understand that, right? You can't create fake profiles for people. You can't trick them into dates. You can't manipulate situations no matter how good your intentions are. We know, they chorused. But, Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. But you made me see something I've been avoiding. I have been just surviving, just existing. And that's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me, and it's definitely not what Mom would have wanted. So you'll try? Lily asked, hope creeping into her voice. I'll try, Daniel promised, but on my terms. When I'm ready, not because you set up ambush dates with my email address. Can we still be friends with Mrs. Bennet? Sophie asked. She's really nice, and we like her, and maybe if you're friends first. No more matchmaking, Daniel said firmly. But yes, Mrs. Bennet is welcome in our lives if she chooses to be. After tonight, I wouldn't blame her for running far away from the Harper family chaos. The girls exchanged one of their silent looks, and Daniel recognized the expression. Determination. You're still planning something, he observed. No, Emma said too quickly. We're done planning, Sophie added. We're just hoping, Lily concluded. Hoping is allowed, right? Daniel stood and opened his arms. 3 8-year-olds crashed into him, holding tight, and he held them back with everything he had. Hoping is always allowed, he whispered into their hair. Even when it's scary, even when it hurts, we're allowed to hope. That night, after the girls were finally asleep, Daniel sat in his bedroom staring at his phone. Laura's contact information was there. Apparently the girls had been thorough in their deception. Her number, her email, her entire dating profile, which he now scrolled through with a mixture of curiosity and guilt. Elementary school teacher, widow, mother to 1 daughter. Interests, reading, hiking, astronomy, coffee. That's too complicated to order without sounding pretentious. Favorite quote, what we have once enjoyed deeply, we can never lose. All that we love deeply becomes a part of us. Helen Keller. Daniel's thumb hovered over the message button. What would he even say? Sorry my daughter's catfished you. Thanks for not pressing charges. Want to grab that coffee you mentioned even though we're both a mess? He set the phone down. Too soon, too much, too everything. But as he lay in bed that night in the blue shirt Catherine had bought him, Daniel realized something had changed. The wall of grief he'd built around himself had developed a crack. And through that crack, for the first time in 2 years, 3 months, and 19 days, a small beam of light was beginning to shine. It terrified him. It also felt like the first breath of air after drowning. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean, and somewhere across town, Laura Bennet was probably lying awake too, thinking about the strangest, most disastrous, most unexpectedly honest evening of her life. 2 broken people, 8 desperate children between them, and one impossible question. What if the worst plans sometimes created the most unexpected possibilities? Daniel closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he let himself imagine an answer that wasn't just survival. He let himself imagine living. The morning after Romanos arrived with the kind of brutal clarity that only comes after you've spent the entire night replaying your most humiliating moments on an endless loop. Daniel stood in the kitchen at 5:30, making coffee in the dark, when his phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "The girls called me crying at midnight. What happened?" He typed back. "Long story. They created a dating profile for me and set up an ambush date with their teacher." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Catherine would have laughed herself sick. Daniel found himself smiling despite everything, because it was true. Catherine would have found the entire disaster hilarious, the scheming, the deception, the sheer audacity of 3 8-year-olds running a matchmaking operation. She would have laughed until she cried, then probably helped them refine their approach. She would have, he typed back. She also would have grounded them until college. "So what are you going to do?" Daniel looked at the darkness outside his window, at his reflection in the glass. A tired man in a blue shirt he still hadn't taken off, holding coffee he didn't want, trying to figure out how to parent through something he barely understood himself. "I have no idea," he admitted. The girls appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6:15, already dressed for school, faces solemn and uncertain. They'd clearly coordinated their approach because they entered in birth order, Emma first, then Sophie, then Lily, and lined up in front of the counter like defendants awaiting sentencing. "We talked last night," Emma began, her voice small, "after you thought we were asleep. We made a list of all the rules we broke," Sophie continued, pulling out a piece of notebook paper covered in their collective handwriting. "And we want to accept our punishment," Lily finished. "Whatever it is. We deserve it." Daniel took the paper. The list was comprehensive and brutally honest. Created fake profile without permission. Used dad's photos without asking. Pretended to be dad in messages. Lied about the school meeting. Manipulated Grandma Diane. Made Mrs. Bennett feel bad. Embarrassed dad in public. Broke trust. At the bottom, in Emma's precise handwriting, "We're really, really sorry. We love you, Dad." "Sit down," Daniel said quietly. They sat, 3 pairs of identical eyes watching him with a mixture of fear and resignation. "Here's what's going to happen," Daniel began, folding the paper carefully. "No tablets for 2 weeks. No TV except educational programming. You're going to write apology letters to Mrs. Bennett, separate letters, in your own words, explaining what you did wrong and why it was wrong." They nodded, accepting their fate. "And," Daniel continued, "you're going to help me figure out how to actually use technology like a functional adult. Because apparently I've been so checked out that my 8-year-old daughters could run an entire catfishing operation under my nose." Emma's lips twitched. "Catfishing is a strong word." "Emma Rose Harper, you created a fake dating profile using my information and photos, engaged in weeks of conversation with unsuspecting women while pretending to be me, and arranged a date I didn't know about. That's literally the definition of catfishing. Technically, we were trying to help. Emma." Daniel's voice was firm but not unkind. "What you did was wrong. Well-intentioned, but wrong. Do you understand the difference?" She nodded, tears threatening again. "We just wanted you to be happy." "I know, but you can't manipulate people into happiness. That's not how it works." Daniel sat down across from them. "Here's what I need you to understand. I am happy. Maybe not the kind of happy I was before Mom died, but I'm happy when I'm with you 3. You are my happiness." "But you don't smile," Sophie whispered. "Not like before," Lily added. "Maybe I need to work on that," Daniel admitted. "And maybe you pointing it out, in the most dramatic way possible, was something I needed to hear. But girls, you can't fix me. I'm not broken. I'm grieving, and that's different." "What's the difference?" Emma asked, her scientific mind needing clear definitions. Daniel thought carefully. Broken means something doesn't work anymore. Grieving means something worked so well, so perfectly, that losing it leaves a hole. I'm not broken. I'm just learning to live with the hole where Mom used to be. The girls processed this in silence, and Daniel could see them trying to understand grief in a way 8-year-olds shouldn't have to. "Can we still hope you find someone someday?" Sophie asked quietly. Not to replace mom. Never to replace mom. But someone who makes you smile again? You can hope, Daniel said. But no more scheming. Deal? Deal, they chorused, and he could see the relief flooding their faces. The drive to school was quieter than usual, each girl lost in thought. But as they pulled up to the drop-off lane, Emma turned from the front seat with sudden urgency. Dad, what if Mrs. Bennett is really mad at us? What if she doesn't want to be our teacher anymore? She said she wouldn't transfer, Daniel reminded her. But what if she changes her mind? Sophie's voice carried genuine fear. What if we ruined everything and now she hates us? Daniel saw Laura Bennett's face in his mind. The humiliation, yes, but also the understanding. The way she'd knelt down to their level. The way she'd seen past their deception to the fear underneath. Mrs. Bennett doesn't hate you, he said with certainty. She's hurt and probably still processing, but she doesn't hate you. Give her time. How much time? Lily asked. As much as she needs. The girls climbed out slowly, backpacks heavy with more than books, and Daniel watched them walk into school with the weight of consequence on their small shoulders. It was a hard lesson, but a necessary one. His phone rang as he pulled out of the parking lot. Diane again. So, she said without preamble, are you going to tell me the whole story, or do I have to piece it together from 3 crying 8-year-olds? Daniel told her everything as he drove to work, the dating profile, the weeks of messages he'd never sent, the ambush at Romano's, Laura's humiliation, the girls hiding behind the plant, the aftermath in the rain. Diane was quiet for a long moment after he finished. Then, did you like her? What? Laura Bennett, did you like her? I didn't. We barely spoke. It was a disaster, Diane. That's not what I asked. His mother-in-law's voice was gentle but persistent. Catherine used to say you could tell everything about how a date went by, what someone focused on in the retelling. You haven't mentioned what Laura looked like, what she wore, whether you found her attractive. You've only talked about her pain, her humiliation, her kindness to the girls. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter. What's your point? My point is that you saw her as a person, not a potential replacement for Catherine. You empathized with her. You ran after her in the rain to apologize. You asked her to meet the girls even though she had every right to refuse. Diane paused. That's not nothing, Daniel. It's also not the foundation for a relationship. It's the aftermath of a catastrophic setup orchestrated by children. Catherine and I met because our drunk friends locked us in a coat closet at a party, Diane said dryly. We were both furious. We spent an hour arguing about everything from politics to pizza toppings. When they finally let us out, I told her she was the most aggravating person I'd ever met. What happened? She asked for my number. We were married 6 months later. Diane's voice softened. I'm not saying Laura Bennett is your future, Daniel. I'm saying don't dismiss possibilities just because they arrive in unexpected packages. The package was 3 8-year-old con artists. Exactly. Unexpected. Work was impossible to focus on. Daniel sat at his desk, staring at spreadsheets that might as well have been written in ancient Greek, while his mind replayed the previous night on an endless loop. Margaret brought him coffee at 10, then again at 11, finally sitting down across from him with the kind of maternal concern she'd perfected over 15 years as his assistant. All right, spill, she said. You've been staring at the same column of numbers for 40 minutes without entering a single formula. Daniel told her an abbreviated version, leaving out the worst of the emotional devastation. Margaret listened, her expression cycling through shock, amusement, and sympathy. Those girls are either going to be brilliant CEOs or criminal masterminds. I'm hoping for the former. So what now? Do you call this Laura woman? Apologize again? Pretend it never happened? I have no idea. The whole thing is... Daniel trailed off, searching for words. Complicated? Margaret supplied. Mortifying? Potentially the worst blind date in human history? All of that. But also, Margaret continued carefully, kind of sweet? In a completely misguided, boundary-violating way? 3 kids who loved their dad so much they tried to find him happiness? Daniel dropped his head into his hands. I don't know how to do this, Margaret. The girls, the grief, the possibility of someone new. I don't know how any of this works anymore. Nobody does, honey. We're all just making it up as we go. She stood patting his shoulder. But maybe start by actually reading those messages your daughter sent as you. Might give you some insight into how they see you, how they want others to see you. After Margaret left, Daniel sat alone in his office and did something he'd been avoiding since the previous night. He downloaded the dating app, logged into the account the girls had created, and began reading. The profile was startlingly accurate in some ways, heartbreaking in others. They'd chosen good photos. Him laughing with the girls at the park, him concentrating on a puzzle, him in the blue shirt Catherine had bought. The images showed a man who looked alive, engaged, present, a man he barely recognized. The bio was simple. Single dad to amazing triplet daughters, accountant by day, adventure seeker by night. Adventures mostly involve bedtime negotiations and impromptu dance parties. Love good food, terrible puns, and people who don't take life too seriously. Looking for someone who understands that family comes first, laughter is essential, and perfect is overrated. It was him. Or rather, it was the him he used to be. The him Catherine had fallen in love with. The him who'd gotten buried under grief and fear and the crushing responsibility of single parenthood. Then he started reading the messages they'd exchanged with Laura, and his heart cracked open all over again. The girls had been thoughtful, genuine. They'd asked Laura about her daughter, her interests, her life. They'd shared stories about him that were true. His terrible cooking, his habit of singing off-key in the car, his dedication to the girls. They'd painted a picture of a man worth knowing, a man worth taking a chance on. And Laura's responses were equally genuine. She'd shared her own stories, Maya's obsession with butterflies, her struggles with bedtime routines, her recent experiment with baking that had resulted in what she called charcoal cookies. But she'd been funny and self-deprecating and honest about the challenges of single parenthood. In one message, she'd written, "Sometimes I forget who I am outside of being Maya's mom. Like I'm just a collection of packed lunches and permission slips and worries about whether I'm doing enough, being enough. Do you ever feel that way?" The girls had responded as him. Every single day. But then I remember that loving them this much, worrying this much, trying this hard, that's not losing yourself. That's becoming the person they need you to be, and maybe that's enough. Daniel read the message 3 times, tears blurring his vision, because whoever had written that, probably Emma, with her emotional intelligence that far exceeded her years, had somehow articulated something he'd never managed to put into words. His phone rang. An unknown number. "Mr. Harper?" Laura Bennett's voice was formal, careful. "I hope I'm not interrupting your workday." "No, not at all. Please, call me Daniel." "Daniel?" She paused. "I'm calling because I wanted to let you know that the girls wrote me apology letters. Beautiful letters, actually. Very heartfelt. I'm glad. They spent half of last night working on them." Emma's was very analytical. She listed every rule of ethical behavior they violated and cross-referenced them with school conduct policies. Laura's voice held the smallest hint of amusement. Sophie's was more emotional, with several drawings of sad faces and hearts, and Lily's, she trailed off. "Lily's what?" "Lily's asked if I would please still consider being your friend because you need friends, and you're really nice, even though you're sad, and she thinks we would like each other if we gave it a chance." Daniel closed his eyes. "I'm sorry. Again, I keep apologizing, but I don't know what else to say." "You could say yes." "What?" "To coffee." Laura's voice was steadier now, more certain. "I spent all night thinking about last night, about how humiliating it was, about how I should be furious with you and your daughters and the entire situation. And I am, a little. But I'm also curious." "Curious about what?" "About the man those girls described in their messages. About whether he's real or just wishful thinking on their part." She paused. "About whether 2 people who've survived the worst thing that can happen might actually understand each other better than people who haven't." Daniel's heart was hammering so hard he could barely hear his own thoughts over the sound of it. "Laura, I don't know if I'm ready for—" "It's coffee, Daniel. Not a marriage proposal. 1 hour, neutral location. We talk like 2 adults who got accidentally ambushed by well-meaning children and see if there's anything worth exploring beyond the disaster." "Why?" The question came out harsher than he intended. Why would you want to subject yourself to more of this chaos? Because, Laura said softly, my daughter has been doing the same things your daughters have been doing. Setting extra places at dinner, asking if I want to go on playdates with her friends' moms, trying desperately to fix something she thinks is broken. And last night, when I came home and told her what happened, she looked at me and said, "Did you like him, Mommy? Even a little?" What did you tell her? I told her I didn't know, that we barely got to speak, that the whole thing was a mess. Laura took a breath. But then she asked, "Do you want to know?" And I realized, I do. I want to know if the man those letters described is real. I want to know if there's someone out there who understands what it's like to lose everything and still have to make breakfast and pack lunches and pretend you're fine. Daniel stared out his office window at the city below, at people going about their normal lives, unbroken and unburdened by the weight he carried every day. 1 hour, he said finally. Coffee. Tomorrow afternoon, if you're free. 2 o'clock at Brewster's on 5th Street. I'll be there. After they hung up, Daniel sat in stunned silence. He'd just agreed to coffee with a woman he'd met in the most catastrophic circumstances possible, a woman who'd been humiliated by his daughter's scheme, a woman who, by all rights, should want nothing to do with him or his chaos. And yet, he pulled up the dating app again, reading through more of the messages, and found one exchange that made his breath catch. Laura had written, "I'm scared of forgetting him. My husband. I'm scared that if I move forward, if I find happiness again, it means I've let him go." The girls had responded, "Our mom used to say that love doesn't disappear just because someone does, that the people we love become part of us, woven into who we are. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting, it means carrying them with us while we keep living." Below that, in a follow-up message, she told our dad that before she died. She made him promise to keep living, to really live, not just survive. We're trying to help him keep that promise. Daniel's vision blurred completely now, tears spilling over, because Catherine had said those exact words. In the hospital, after the girls were born, when complications had turned critical and they'd both known she was dying. "Promise me," she'd whispered, her hand weak in his. "Promise me you'll really live, for them, for yourself, for me." He'd promised. He'd failed. For 2 years he'd been surviving, not living, and it had taken 3 8-year-olds to force him to see it. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Did Mrs. Bennett call you?" Daniel wiped his eyes and typed back, "Yes." 3 dots. Then, "Are you mad we gave her your number?" "Yes and no." What does that mean? It means life is complicated and sometimes the worst things lead to unexpected possibilities. A pause. Then, "That's very philosophical, Dad. I learned from the best. Mom? Mom, and you 3. That night, after dinner and homework and baths, the girls gathered in the living room with unusual solemnity. Emma carried a laptop, Sophie held a folder full of papers, and Lily dragged over the ottoman to create a makeshift meeting space. "We need to have a family meeting," Emma announced. Daniel set down the dish towel. "About?" "About the dating profile." She opened the laptop, pulling up the account. "We're going to delete it, together, so you can see we're serious about respecting your privacy and autonomy." "Autonomy is a big word for 8-year-olds, Daniel observed. "Mrs. Bennett taught it to us when we were discussing personal boundaries in class," Sophie explained. "She said everyone has the right to make their own choices about their life, their body, and their relationships." "She's really smart," Lily added. "We should have listened to her before we made the profile." Daniel joined them on the couch, Emma handing him the laptop. The profile was still there. His face, his information, his manufactured life. "Before we delete it," Emma said quietly, "we want you to know that everyone we matched you with was really carefully chosen. We didn't just swipe randomly. We looked for people who seemed kind," Sophie continued, "who had kids, who understood about loss." "We messaged 47 people," Lily said, "but only 7 seemed right. And out of those 7, Mrs. Bennett was the only one who seemed perfect." Daniel looked at the screen, at the evidence of his daughter's elaborate scheme, and felt the strange mixture of emotions that had become familiar over the past 24 hours. "Why Mrs. Bennet?" he asked. The girls exchanged one of their looks, having a silent conversation, before Emma spoke. "Because she talks about her husband the way you talk about Mom, like he was the best person in the world, and losing him broke something that can't be fixed." Emma's voice was thick with emotion, but she also smiles at us every day and tells jokes and makes learning fun. She's sad and happy at the same time, just like we are. "We thought maybe if you met someone who understood being sad and happy at the same time, you wouldn't feel so alone," Sophie added. "And maybe," Lily finished, "you'd remember that it's okay to be both, that you don't have to choose." Daniel pulled all three girls close, holding them against the grief and love and impossible wisdom that lived in their small bodies. "I'm having coffee with her tomorrow," he said quietly. Three heads snapped up in unison. "You are?" Emma's voice pitched high with excitement. "Really?" Sophie's eyes were wide. "Is it a date?" Lily demanded. "It's coffee," Daniel corrected. "To talk, as two adults who got ambushed by well-meaning children and want to make sure there are no hard feelings." "But it could become a date," Emma pressed. "It could become a disaster," Daniel countered. "Or it could become nothing. Or it could become a friendship. I don't know, and neither do you, and that's okay." "But you're trying," Sophie said, and it wasn't a question. "I'm trying," Daniel confirmed, "because you three made me realize I've been so focused on keeping you safe that I forgot to show you how to actually live. And that's not fair to you." "We just want you to be happy, Dad," Lily whispered. "I know, baby, I know." Together, they deleted the profile. Daniel clicked through the prompts. "Are you sure? You'll lose all matches and messages," and pressed confirm. The account disappeared, and with it, weeks of his daughter's careful work. "Thank you for respecting my choice," Daniel said, "even though it means undoing all your planning." "We saved the messages," Emma admitted, "just in case you wanted to remember what we wrote. We thought maybe someday you'd want to see how we described you." Daniel took the folder Sophie held, opening it to find printouts of every message exchange. The girls had highlighted certain parts in different colors: yellow for things they were proud of, pink for things that made them laugh, blue for things that made them cry. Most of the messages with Laura were completely blue. "You really liked her, didn't you?" Daniel asked. "She gets it," Emma said simply. "She gets what it's like to miss someone so much it hurts. And she doesn't try to make it go away. She just sits with it, like it's okay to hurt and keep going anyway." That night, long after the girls were asleep, Daniel sat in his bedroom rereading the messages. He found himself smiling at Laura's sense of humor, her honesty about parenting struggles, her admission that she sometimes hid in the bathroom just to get 5 minutes of peace. One exchange stopped him cold. Laura had written, "Do you ever feel guilty about the moments you forget to be sad? Like if you laugh too hard or enjoy something too much, you're betraying their memory." The girls had responded, "All the time. But our mom used to say that grief and joy can exist together, that we honor the people we love by continuing to live fully, not by being sad forever." Laura's response, "Your wife sounds like she was an incredible woman." The girls, "She was. And we think she'd like you." Daniel set down the papers and picked up his phone, opening his conversation with Laura. He typed and deleted 3 different messages before finally settling on, "Thank you for giving me another chance tomorrow. I promise to actually show up this time." Oh, her response came quickly. "I'm holding you to that. And Daniel, your daughters are remarkable. Whatever else happens, you should know you're doing something very right with them." He stared at the message for a long moment before typing, "I'm trying. Some days that's all I've got. Some days that's enough." Daniel set the phone aside and lay back on his bed, still wearing the blue shirt because he couldn't quite bring himself to take it off yet. The ceiling held no answers, offered no guidance, but for the first time in 2 years, he felt something other than the crushing weight of survival. He felt possibility. It was terrifying and fragile and possibly the beginning of another disaster, but it was there, a tiny spark of something that might be hope, might be connection, might be the first step toward actually living instead of just existing. Outside his window, the city hummed with life continuing, People loving and losing and trying and failing and getting up to try again. And somewhere in that same city, Laura Bennett was probably lying awake too, wondering if coffee tomorrow was brave or foolish or both. Two broken people, one impossible situation, and 8 children who somehow knew what the adults had forgotten. That healing didn't mean forgetting, that moving forward didn't mean leaving behind, and that sometimes the worst disasters created the most unexpected opportunities for grace. Daniel closed his eyes and let himself imagine tomorrow. Not the date he wasn't calling a date, but the conversation, the honesty, the possibility of someone who understood without explanation, who carried the same weight, who knew what it meant to keep going when everything in you wanted to stop. He imagined Catherine watching all of this unfold, and he could almost hear her laughing, that bright, joyful sound that had filled their home, that the girls had inherited, that he'd forgotten how to create. "I'm trying," he whispered into the darkness. "I'm scared, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm trying." And somewhere, in memory or imagination or the space between, he felt her approval settle over him like a blessing. The next chapter was beginning whether he was ready or not. All he could do was show up, be honest, and see what happened when 2 people shaped by loss decided to try being brave together. Daniel arrived at Brewster's Coffee at exactly 1:55, which gave him 5 minutes to second-guess every decision that had led to this moment. He changed shirts 3 times that morning before the girls had staged an intervention, insisting he wear the navy Henley that Emma claimed made him look approachable but not desperate. He had no idea where an 8-year-old learned those distinctions, but he'd been too nervous to argue. Now he sat in his car across the street, watching the cafe entrance, his hands gripping the steering wheel like it might anchor him to something solid. He could still leave. Send a text claiming work emergency, family crisis, sudden onset plague. Laura would understand. She'd probably be relieved. His phone buzzed, a text from Sophie. "Remember to smile with your eyes. Mrs. Bennett notices eyes." Then Emma. "Be yourself, the real you, not the surviving you." Finally, Lily. "We love you, Daddy, even if you mess this up." Daniel laughed despite his nerves because his daughters had somehow become his life coaches, and that was either beautiful or deeply concerning. Probably both. He got out of the car. Laura was already inside, seated at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her, and when she saw him through the window, she offered a small, uncertain wave. Daniel's heart did something complicated in his chest as he walked through the door, and he realized with sudden clarity that this woman was real. Not a profile his daughters had crafted, not a fantasy of moving on, but an actual person with her own fears and scars and reasons for being here. "Hi," he said, approaching the table with the kind of awkward formality usually reserved for job interviews. "Hi." Laura gestured to the coffee. "I wasn't sure how you took it, so I got it black. There's cream and sugar on the table if you need it." "Black is perfect. Thank you." Daniel sat down, and for a moment they just looked at each other, 2 strangers connected by the most ridiculous circumstances imaginable. Laura spoke first. "So this is officially the strangest coffee date I've ever been on, and I once had a guy bring his mother along to make sure I was appropriate wife material." Daniel felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. "Did you pass inspection?" She said I held my fork wrong and my laugh was too loud. Laura's smile was rueful. "We did not have a second date." "For what it's worth, I think your laugh is probably exactly right. You haven't heard it yet." "True, but I'm willing to bet the girls wouldn't have chosen someone whose laugh was wrong." Laura's expression softened. "They really did put a lot of thought into this, didn't they? Apparently they vetted 47 potential candidates, and you were the only one who met all their criteria." Daniel took a sip of coffee, grateful for something to do with his hands. "I read through all the messages last night, the ones they sent as me, and they were thoughtful, genuine. They asked you real questions and gave you real answers about our lives. It was..." He paused, searching for words. "It was like reading letters from the version of myself I used to be. Before everything." Laura nodded slowly. "I read them again too, multiple times, actually. I kept trying to figure out which parts were really you and which parts were them. But the more I read, the more I realized it didn't matter. They see you a certain way, Daniel. They see someone worth knowing. They're biased. I'm their father. Children are brutally honest about their parents' flaws, Laura countered. Trust me, Maya has informed me that I sing off-key, cook mediocre pasta, and say actually too much when I'm nervous. Are you nervous now? Terrified, Laura admitted. I haven't been on a coffee date, or any kind of date, since before my husband got sick. And I definitely haven't been on a date that started with public humiliation and children hiding behind restaurant plants. Daniel felt a laugh building in his chest, unexpected and unfamiliar. When you put it that way, we've already survived the worst possible beginning. Anything from here is an improvement. That's a refreshingly low bar. I'm an accountant. We love low bars and reasonable expectations. Laura's smile reached her eyes this time, and Daniel understood what Sophie meant about eyes mattering. Laura's were brown and warm and carried the same exhaustion he saw in his own mirror every morning. Tell me about Maya, Daniel said, because it seemed safer than talking about themselves. The girls say she's obsessed with butterflies. Laura's entire face transformed. Obsessed is an understatement. She has 17 butterfly identification books, a butterfly garden in our backyard, and she's convinced she's going to discover a new species someday. Last week, she tried to convince me to let her turn her bedroom into a butterfly sanctuary. Did you let her? I compromised with butterfly wall decals and a promise that no actual caterpillars would be living in her dresser drawers. Laura laughed, and Daniel decided immediately that the guy's mother had been completely wrong. Her laugh was perfect, genuine and unguarded and full of life. She's 7 going on 40. She organizes my spice cabinet for fun. Emma does the same thing with my office supplies. She's created an entire filing system based on some organizational theory she read about online. Does it work? I have no idea. I'm too afraid to disrupt it. They talked for an hour about their children, and it was the easiest conversation Daniel had had in years. Laura told him about Maya's tendency to ask profound questions at bedtime. Mommy, if we're made of star stuff, does that mean Daddy is in the stars now? And Daniel shared the triplets' ongoing debate about whether penguins were better than dolphins, which had resulted in a 40-page research presentation complete with citations. They cited their sources? Laura asked, impressed. Emma insisted on academic integrity. Sophie added illustrations. Lily provided the dramatic reading. Daniel shook his head. I still don't know who won the debate. Who did you vote for? I abstained on grounds of parental neutrality. They were not pleased. Laura laughed again, and Daniel felt something in his chest loosen further, some knot of tension he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it wasn't permanent. But eventually, inevitably, the conversation shifted to harder territory. Can I ask you something? Laura said quietly, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. When did it get easier? Or does it not get easier, and I'm just waiting for something that never comes? Daniel considered lying, offering platitudes about time healing all wounds, but Laura's eyes held the same desperation he'd felt countless times over the past 2 years. She deserved honesty. It doesn't get easier, he said. It gets different. The first year, everything was acute. Every moment was about survival, getting through breakfast, getting through bedtime, getting through another day without completely falling apart in front of the girls. The second year was worse in some ways because the shock wore off and reality set in. This is permanent. She's not coming back. This is the rest of my life. Laura's eyes were bright with unshed tears. That's where I am now, the reality phase. I'm sorry. Don't be. I asked for honesty. She wiped at her eyes. Everyone keeps telling me it gets better, that time heals, that I'll find joy again. But nobody tells you that some days you forget to be sad, and then you feel guilty for forgetting, or that you can be having a perfectly fine morning until you see his favorite coffee mug, and it destroys you. Or when you hear a song you used to dance to in the kitchen, Daniel added. Or when something funny happens and you reach for your phone to text them before you remember. Or when your daughter does something amazing and you think he would have loved this, and then you're angry all over again that he's missing it. They sat in the weight of shared understanding, two people who'd learned the same brutal lessons about loss and survival. The girls' letters mentioned that Catherine told you to keep living, Laura said eventually. Did she really say that, or was that them trying to make the story more romantic? Daniel's throat tightened. She said it. In the hospital, after the girls were born, she had complications, placental abruption, hemorrhaging. The doctors did everything they could, but... He stopped, took a breath. She made me promise. She said she didn't want me to just survive. She wanted me to really live. For the girls, for myself, for her. Have you? Been living, I mean? No. The admission felt like failure and relief in equal measure. I've been surviving. I've been doing everything right on paper, working, parenting, maintaining routines. But I haven't been living. The girls knew it. Diane knew it. I just couldn't see it until 3 8-year-olds staged an intervention via catfishing. Laura smiled despite the tears on her cheeks. Maya asked me last month if I was happy. Not, are you okay, or are you sad about daddy, but specifically, are you happy, mommy? And I realized I didn't know how to answer because I'd forgotten what happy felt like. What did you tell her? I told her I was trying to find happy again, that it was hiding somewhere and I was looking for it. Laura met his eyes. She's been leaving little notes around the house ever since. Happy as in the garden. Happy as in bedtime stories. Happy as in pancakes. She's trying to help me find it. Daniel felt his own eyes burning. They're so much smarter than we are. And so much braver. They ordered more coffee, and the conversation shifted again, lighter this time. Laura told him about her disastrous attempt to fix her garbage disposal that had resulted in a kitchen flood and a very expensive plumber. Daniel shared the story of the triplets' experimental phase with cooking that had produced something they'd called breakfast surprise and what he'd called a crime against food. What was in it? Laura asked, laughing. I honestly couldn't tell you. There was cereal involved, and possibly jelly, and something that might have been pickles, but I was too afraid to ask. Daniel shook his head. I made them eat 3 bites each as penance. That's mean. That's parenting. It's... Laura checked her phone and her eyes widened. It's 4:30. We've been here for 2.5 hours. Daniel looked around the cafe, realizing it had filled and emptied and filled again while they'd been talking. I didn't even notice. Me neither. Laura gathered her things slowly, reluctantly. I should get Maya from my sister's house. She's probably reorganized the entire pantry by now. They walked out together, and on the sidewalk in the late afternoon sun, they stood awkwardly like teenagers after a first date. Thank you for this, Laura said, for showing up, for being honest, for not being the complete disaster I was half expecting. I could say the same thing. Daniel hesitated, then decided to be brave. Would you want to do this again? Coffee, I mean. Or maybe something else. With the kids, perhaps. They could meet properly, without the deception and hiding behind plants. Laura bit her lip, considering. Maya's been asking about your daughters since I told her what happened. She thinks the whole thing is wildly romantic in a completely age-inappropriate way. The triplets have been suspiciously quiet about you, which means they're probably planning our wedding. Let's start with a park play date and see if we can manage that without catastrophe. Saturday afternoon, there's a good playground near my house with a butterfly garden. Laura's smile was bright and genuine. Maya will lose her mind in the best way. They exchanged actual phone numbers this time, not daughters as matchmakers' numbers, but real contact information between 2 adults who'd decided to try something terrifying and possibly wonderful. Daniel drove home in a daze, his mind replaying moments from the afternoon. Laura's laugh, her honesty about grief, the way she'd understood everything he hadn't known how to say. It wasn't love. It was too soon for love, too fragile and new. But it was something. Connection, maybe. Understanding. The possibility of not being quite so alone. The girls ambushed him the moment he walked through the door. How was it? Emma demanded. Did you use the conversation starters we suggested? Sophie asked. Did she like you? Lily pressed. Did you like her? Are you going to see her again? Daniel held up his hands in surrender. One question at a time, and maybe let me take off my shoes first. They followed him to the living room, a small parade of eager interrogators, and waited with barely contained impatience while he sat down. It was good, Daniel said carefully. We talked about you 3, about Maya, about parenting and coffee and various household disasters. We were there for over 2 hours. 3 pairs of eyes went wide. 2 hours is really good, Emma said knowledgeably. According to dating statistics, first dates that last over 90 minutes have a 73% higher success rate. Where are you getting these statistics? The internet is very informative. The internet is also full of lies, and you're 8. Daniel pinned her with a look. We're going to have a serious conversation about your research habits. After you tell us about Mrs. Bennet, Emma countered. Daniel sighed, recognizing defeat. We're going to meet at the park on Saturday. All of us. You 3, Laura, and Maya. A casual play date so everyone can meet properly. The girls erupted in celebration, jumping and hugging and generally behaving like their matchmaking scheme had just been validated. This doesn't mean we're dating, Daniel said firmly over the chaos. This means we're 2 single parents who are cautiously exploring a potential friendship while our children play in a supervised environment. That's a very long way of saying you like her, Lily observed. I didn't say I didn't like her. So you do like her, Sophie practically vibrated with excitement. I like that she understands. I like that I don't have to explain grief to her because she's living it too. I like that she's kind to you 3, even after you put her through that disaster at Romano's. Daniel looked at each of them in turn. But liking someone and being ready for a relationship are different things. We're taking this slow, okay? No more scheming. We won't scheme, Emma promised. We'll just facilitate, Sophie added. Facilitating is scheming with better vocabulary, Daniel said. We'll be good, Lily concluded. We promise. We just want you to be happy. I know, baby, and I appreciate it, but you need to let me figure this out on my own. Can you do that? 3 reluctant nods. That night, after the girls were in bed, Daniel called Diane. So, she said immediately, how was coffee with the woman your granddaughters catfished for you? Why does everyone keep using the word catfished? Because that's literally what happened. He could hear the smile in her voice. How was it, Daniel? It was good. Really good, actually. We talked for over 2 hours, and it felt like minutes. He paused, searching for the right words. She's easy to talk to. She gets it. The grief, the parenting alone, the constant fear that you're doing everything wrong. Catherine would approve. Daniel's chest tightened. You think so? Honey, Catherine told me at your wedding that she hoped if anything ever happened to her, you'd find someone who made you laugh again. She was very specific about it. Someone who made you laugh, not someone who made you forget. Diane's voice was soft. She wanted you happy, Daniel. She always wanted you happy. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Scared of moving on. Scared of what it means. Scared I'm betraying her memory. Loving someone new doesn't erase loving Catherine. Hearts don't work that way. They expand. Diane paused. And Daniel? Catherine's not here to tell you this, so I will. You deserve happiness. You deserve someone who sees you, not just the grief. You deserve to live, not just survive. Why does everyone keep saying that? Because it's true, and you need to hear it until you believe it. After they hung up, Daniel sat in the quiet house and let himself think about Saturday, about introducing his daughters to Maya, about watching Laura in the sunlight instead of in a dim restaurant or a coffee shop, about the possibility of building something new without destroying something old. His phone buzzed. A text from Laura. Maya is already planning her outfit for Saturday. She wants to wear her butterfly wings. I'm letting you know now so your girls aren't underdressed. Daniel smiled and typed back, fair warning, they'll probably show up in matching outfits they've coordinated specifically for maximum cute factor. Are we in a children's cuteness competition? Apparently. This game on, Harper. Saturday arrived with cloudless skies and the kind of perfect spring weather that felt designed for new beginnings. The girls had indeed coordinated outfits, lavender dresses with white sneakers that Emma claimed would be appropriate for both playing and making good impressions. They'd also packed a bag full of items they deemed essential for meeting Maya, their favorite books about penguins and dolphins, a sketch pad Sophie insisted on bringing, and a collection of friendship bracelets Lily had made the night before. You know this isn't a formal presentation, right? Daniel asked as he loaded everything into the car. We're just meeting at a park. First impressions matter, Emma said seriously. We want Maya to like us. She's going to like you because you're likable, not because you brought props. The props don't hurt, though, Sophie reasoned. Daniel couldn't argue with that logic. They arrived at the park at exactly 2 o'clock to find Laura and Maya already there. Maya was indeed wearing butterfly wings, iridescent purple ones that caught the light, and when she saw the triplets, her face lit up with an excitement that matched theirs. "You must be Emma, Sophie, and Lily," Maya said, approaching with the kind of confidence Daniel wished he possessed. "Your dad talks about you all the time in the messages." The girls glanced at each other, clearly unsure how to respond to being discussed by their own fake personas. "Those were actually us," Emma admitted. "We were pretending to be our dad. We're really sorry about that." Maya considered this information seriously. "Did you mean the nice things you said about him?" "Yes," all three girls said in unison. "Then I forgive you." Maya adjusted her wings. "My mom said you were trying to help him be happy, and I think that's nice. I try to help my mom be happy too." Just like that, the tension broke. The four girls started talking about butterflies and penguins and the relative merits of various playground equipment, leaving Daniel and Laura standing together watching their children begin what looked like the start of a genuine friendship. "That was easier than expected," Laura said. "Children are better at forgiveness than adults. Children are better at most things than adults." They walked slowly behind the girls, maintaining visual contact but giving them space to interact naturally. Maya was explaining the difference between monarch and viceroy butterflies. While Emma listened with scientific fascination, Sophie sketched them all, and Lily asked increasingly philosophical questions about whether butterflies remembered being caterpillars. "She's wonderful," Daniel said, watching Maya gesture enthusiastically with her wings. "They all are." Laura's voice was thick with emotion. "Maya hasn't been this excited about meeting new people since before David died. She got so withdrawn after, so careful. Seeing her like this? I know. The girls did the same thing. It's like they forgot how to be kids for a while." They found a bench near the butterfly garden, close enough to supervise but far enough to give the children privacy. The girls had decided to hunt for caterpillars, and their laughter carried across the park like music. "This is nice," Laura said. "Normal, like we're just two parents watching our kids play." "We are just two parents watching our kids play." "You know what I mean, without the weight of everything else." Daniel did know. For the first time in 2 years, he felt almost normal. Not healed, not whole, but functional, present, real. "Can I ask you something?" Laura turned to face him. "And you can tell me if I'm overstepping." "Ask." "The girls mentioned in one of their messages that Catherine made you promise to keep living, to really live, not just survive." She paused. "Do you think she'd count this as living, this afternoon, us trying?" Daniel thought about Catherine, not the way she'd been at the end, pale and weak and slipping away, but the way she'd been when they'd met, bold and bright, and absolutely certain about what she wanted from life. "She'd count it," he said quietly. "She'd probably also have about 1,000 questions and 12 pieces of unsolicited advice, and she'd want to make sure I wasn't rushing into anything or using it as a way to avoid grief." Was she always that direct? Always. It was one of the things I loved most about her. You never had to wonder where you stood. Daniel smiled at the memory. "On our third date, she told me she could see herself marrying me, but I needed to work on my tendency to avoid difficult conversations." Laura laughed. "Did you work on it?" "I tried. She kept me honest." He looked at Laura. "What about David? What would he say about this?" Laura's expression grew distant, remembering. "He'd tell me to stop overthinking everything and just see what happens. He was always better at living in the moment than I was. I'm a planner, always 3 steps ahead, always preparing for worst-case scenarios." Her voice broke slightly. "I planned for a lot of things, but I didn't plan for losing him at 38. Nobody plans for that." "No, they don't." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children create the kind of easy friendship that adults struggled to replicate. Maya was teaching the triplets how to identify butterflies. Emma was taking notes, Sophie was sketching the different species, and Lily was making up stories about where each butterfly had come from. "They're going to be trouble together," Daniel observed. "Absolutely," Laura agreed. "Maya's already asked if she can have sisters." "What did you tell her?" I told her that families come in all different shapes, and sometimes the best siblings are the ones you choose. Laura glanced at him. Was that okay? I didn't want to presume anything about where this is going. It was perfect. Daniel hesitated, then decided to be brave. I don't know where this is going either. I don't know if I'm ready for it to go anywhere. But I know I want to keep trying, keep talking, keep seeing if two broken people can figure out how to be functional together. That's very romantic, Laura said dryly. I'm an accountant. Romance isn't really my department. Good thing I'm not looking for romance. I'm looking for honesty. That I can do. The afternoon stretched into early evening, the children reluctant to leave, the adults equally reluctant to end something that felt fragile and new and surprisingly right. Finally, as the sun began to set, they gathered everyone together. Can we do this again? Maya asked immediately. Can we have more playdates? Please, the triplets chorused. Daniel and Laura exchanged a look, having one of those silent conversations that parents develop, and came to a mutual decision. How about next Saturday, Laura suggested. Maybe at the Science Museum? Maya's been wanting to see the butterfly exhibit. We could do lunch after, Daniel added. Make a whole day of it. The children erupted in celebration, already planning outfits and topics of conversation, and Daniel felt his heart do that complicated thing again where it hurt and healed simultaneously. As they walked to their cars, Maya ran ahead with the triplets, chattering about butterflies and penguins and whether they could all learn to draw together. Laura walked beside Daniel, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed, and he wondered if she felt the same electric possibility he did. Thank you for today, Laura said as they reached her car. For giving this a chance. For being patient with my mess. Your mess looks a lot like my mess, Daniel replied. Maybe that's why it works. Maya hugged each of the triplets goodbye, making them promise to text her about their week, and then climbed into the car. Laura paused with her hand on the door handle. Daniel, I'm glad your daughters catfished me. He laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. That's definitely a first. I mean it. This, whatever this is, it's the first time I've felt like maybe I can figure out how to be happy and sad at the same time. Like maybe those two things don't have to cancel each other out. They don't, Daniel said softly. I'm learning that too. Laura drove away, and Daniel stood in the parking lot watching her taillights disappear, feeling the weight of possibility settle over him like a warm coat. The girls were already in the car, probably dissecting every moment of the afternoon, planning their next strategic move. He climbed into the driver's seat to find them uncharacteristically quiet. All right, he said. What are you three thinking so hard about? Emma spoke first. We like Maya. She's really smart. She's really creative too, Sophie added. She sees butterflies the way I see colors. And Mrs. Bennet is really pretty when she smiles, Lily concluded. You smile a lot today, Dad. Daniel started the car, his chest tight with emotions he was still learning to name. I smiled a lot too. We noticed. Emma's voice was soft. It reached your eyes this time. The drive home was filled with chatter about the afternoon, about Maya's butterfly knowledge, and Laura's laugh, and the promise of next Saturday. Daniel let it wash over him, this normalcy he'd forgotten could exist, and when they got home, the girls disappeared to their rooms to create friendship bracelets for Maya. Daniel stood in the kitchen making dinner, and for the first time since Catherine's death, he caught himself humming. Just a few notes of a song they used to dance to, but it was there, a small piece of life returning. His phone buzzed, a text from Laura. Maya hasn't stopped talking about your girls. She's currently making a presentation about why they should all be best friends, complete with graphs. Daniel smiled and typed back. The triplets are making friendship bracelets and planning next Saturday's outfits. I think Maya has competition in the organization department. We've created a monster friendship. Multiple monsters, at least 4. Worth it, though. Yeah, Daniel typed, and meant it with his whole heart. Definitely worth it. That night, after the girls were asleep, Daniel sat in his bedroom and looked at the photo of Catherine on his nightstand. She was laughing in the picture, probably at something ridiculous he'd said, her eyes bright with joy and life. I'm trying, he whispered to her memory. I'm scared and I have no idea if I'm doing this right, but I'm trying, just like I promised. The photo didn't answer, but in the quiet of his room, Daniel felt something shift. Not forgetting, never forgetting, but making space. Space for grief and hope to exist together. Space for Catherine's memory and Laura's presence to both be real. Space for his daughters to see him live instead of just survive. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was a beginning. And sometimes Daniel was learning a beginning was enough. The next Saturday became a pattern, then a ritual, then something neither Daniel nor Laura could imagine their weeks without. The Science Museum led to the aquarium, which led to weekend brunches, which led to Friday movie nights at Daniel's house, where 4 girls would build elaborate blanket forts and debate the scientific accuracy of animated films, while the adults pretended to supervise from the kitchen. 3 months passed like water through fingers, gentle and inevitable, and Daniel found himself learning what it meant to build something new without dismantling what came before. Catherine's photos still hung on the walls. Her coffee mug still sat in the cabinet. The girls still talked about her in present tense sometimes, saying Mom would have loved this, or Mom used to do it this way. And Daniel learned to let those moments exist without pain swallowing him whole. Laura understood because she did the same thing. David's watch still sat on her dresser. His favorite book remained on the nightstand. Maya wore his old college sweatshirt to bed most nights, the fabric worn soft from years of love and loss. They were 2 people learning to carry their dead while reaching for the living, and somehow, impossibly, it was working. I think we need to talk about what this is, Laura said one evening after the girls had finally fallen asleep in the living room, tangled together like puppies in the blanket fort. They sat in Daniel's kitchen nursing wine. Neither of them was really drinking, the weight of unspoken things finally demanding acknowledgement. Daniel's stomach clenched. Okay. We've been doing this for 3 months. We see each other almost every day. Our daughters are basically sisters at this point. Maya calls your house our other home. Laura traced the rim of her wine glass. But we've never actually talked about what we are to each other. What do you want us to be? I asked you first. Daniel smiled despite his nerves. You sound like Emma. Emma's a smart kid. She knows how to avoid answering difficult questions. Laura met his eyes. I need to know where your head is, Daniel, because I'm falling for you, and that terrifies me, and I need to know if I should stop before it gets harder. The admission hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed, and Daniel felt his heart hammering against his ribs. 3 months ago, he would have retreated, would have found a way to deflect, to maintain distance, to keep himself safe behind walls of grief and fear. But 3 months of Laura's honesty had taught him something about bravery. I'm falling for you too, he said quietly, and it terrifies me too. I keep waiting for the guilt to destroy me, for Catherine's memory to rise up and accuse me of betrayal. But it doesn't come. Instead, I just keep thinking about how she'd like you, how she'd approve of someone who makes me laugh and calls me on my avoidance and doesn't try to fix my grief. Laura's eyes were bright with tears. David would have liked you too. He'd probably make some terrible accountant joke and then demand to know your intentions toward his wife. What would you tell him my intentions are? I'd tell him you're kind and patient and you love your daughters with everything you have. I'd tell him you make me feel less alone. She paused. I'd tell him I think I could love you if you let me, if we let ourselves. Daniel reached across the table, taking her hand in his, feeling the warmth of her skin against his palm. I think I could love you too. I think maybe I already do, a little bit. A little bit. Laura's smile was watery but genuine. I'm an accountant. We deal in precise measurements. Of course you do. They sat holding hands across the kitchen table, 2 broken people deciding to try being whole together. And when Daniel finally kissed her, it was soft and tentative and full of promise. It wasn't the passionate, all-consuming love he'd had with Catherine. It was something different, quieter, more careful, built on shared understanding rather than youthful certainty. It was enough, more than enough. The next morning, they told the children over breakfast, which was probably unnecessary given that 4 girls were staring at them with matching expressions of triumph. We know, Emma said before either adult could speak. You've been dating for 3 months. We've been tracking the relationship progression. Daniel blinked. You've been what? Tracking, Sophie explained, pulling out a notebook. First coffee date, first play date, first time you held hands, first time misses. Bennett stayed for dinner, first time you went out alone without us. That's incredibly invasive, Laura interrupted, though her lips were twitching. That's thorough research, Emma corrected. We wanted to make sure it was working. And is it? Daniel asked, curious despite himself. Working, according to your research? Four heads nodded in unison. You smile 73% more than you did before, Lily reported. We've been counting. You laugh at Mrs. Bennett's jokes even when they're not funny, Sophie added. That's a key indicator of affection. My jokes are hilarious, Laura protested. Some of them are, Maya said diplomatically. But Dad's right. You do have a problem with puns. Dad? The word slipped out before Laura could stop it, and Maya froze, her eyes going wide. I'm sorry, I didn't mean… Maya's face crumpled. I know he's not my dad. I know I have a dad. Laura pulled her daughter close. Hey, it's okay, you're okay. But Maya was crying now, 7 years of grief and confusion pouring out. I don't want to forget him. I don't want to replace him. But I like Mr. Harper, and I want him to be in our family, and I don't know how to have both. The triplets immediately surrounded Maya in a group hug, and Daniel felt his chest crack open watching 4 children try to navigate emotions that adults struggled to understand. Maya, sweetheart, look at me, Daniel said gently. He knelt down to her level. You're not replacing your dad. You could never replace him, and I would never want you to. Your dad loved you so much, and that love doesn't disappear just because he's not here anymore. But I called you Dad, Maya whispered, and that's okay. You can call me whatever feels right to you. Daniel, Mr. Harper, Dad, something completely different. There's no wrong answer. He glanced at Laura, seeing his own emotions reflected in her eyes. Love doesn't run out, Maya. Your heart's big enough for your dad's memory, and for new people too. They don't cancel each other out. Really? Maya's voice was so small, so full of desperate hope. Really? The triplets love their mom, and they're learning to care about Laura. That doesn't mean they've forgotten Catherine or that they love her less. It just means their hearts grew bigger. Emma nodded seriously. It's like when we got the second fish tank. We still loved the first fish, but we had room for more fish too. That's a terrible metaphor, Sophie said. It's accurate, though, Lily argued. Maya laughed through her tears, and the tension broke. Laura pulled her daughter onto her lap, holding her close while Daniel stood awkwardly, unsure of his place in this moment of mother-daughter intimacy. But then Maya reached out to him, and he found himself pulled into the embrace, and suddenly all 3 of them were holding each other while 4 girls watched with satisfaction. This is good, Emma observed. Healthy family bonding. Where are you getting this stuff? Daniel asked, his voice muffled against Laura's shoulder. The internet is very educational. The internet is going to be blocked in this house. Later, after Maya and Laura had gone home and the triplets were in bed, Daniel sat in the living room staring at nothing. Diane called, as she did most Sunday nights, and he told her about Maya calling him Dad. How do you feel about that? Diane asked carefully. Terrified. Honored, completely overwhelmed. Daniel ran his hands through his hair. I never thought I'd be a father to anyone but the triplets. And now there's this little girl who's starting to see me that way, and I don't know if I'm ready for that responsibility. Daniel, you've been acting as a father figure to Maya for months now. You help with her homework. You listen to her butterfly facts. You make sure she's included in everything with the girls. The only thing that's changed is the word she uses. Words matter. They do. But so do actions, and yours have been saying Dad for a while now. Diane paused. How does Laura feel about it? We haven't really talked about it yet. She was focused on comforting Maya. You need to talk about it. About expectations, boundaries, what this means for all of you. Diane's voice softened. You're building a blended family, honey. That's beautiful and complicated, and it requires constant communication. I know. Do you? Because you have a tendency to avoid difficult conversations. Daniel smiled despite himself. Catherine used to say the same thing. Catherine was a smart woman. You should listen to her more often. He called Laura after hanging up with Diane, and they talked for 2 hours about Maya, about expectations, about the terrifying prospect of becoming a family unit rather than two separate families that spent time together. I don't want to rush this, Laura said, but I also don't want to hold back if it's right. Maya's been through so much. If she's ready to think of you as a father figure, I don't want to tell her she's wrong. I don't want to replace David. You won't, you couldn't, but you can be a different kind of father to her, one who's present and caring and shows her that men can be gentle and reliable. Laura's voice caught. David was all of those things, but he's gone, and Maya needs someone now. And Daniel, you're already being that person. Maya just put a name to it. What if I mess it up? Then we'll figure it out together. That's what families do. Families. The word settled over Daniel like a benediction and a challenge. He'd had a family, Catherine and the Triplets, perfect and complete. He'd never imagined having another one, different but equally real. I'm scared, he admitted. Me too, but I think we should be scared together. That's very romantic. I learned from the best accountant I know. 6 months became a year, and the shape of their lives transformed gradually, organically, like water finding new paths. Laura started keeping clothes at Daniel's house. Daniel had a drawer at Laura's apartment. The girls had sleepovers that lasted entire weekends. They celebrated birthdays and holidays as one extended family unit, with Diane embracing Laura and Maya like they'd always belonged. On the anniversary of Catherine's death, Daniel woke up expecting the day to destroy him the way it had the previous year. Instead, he found Laura in his kitchen making coffee, the girls still asleep upstairs, and when she saw his face, she simply opened her arms. I wasn't sure if you'd want company today, she said quietly. But I wanted you to know you don't have to do this alone. Thank you. They spent the morning at Catherine's grave, all 7 of them, and Daniel told Laura stories about his late wife while the girls left flowers and drawings. Maya listened carefully, then placed her own flower on the grave. Thank you for loving Mr. Harper first, Maya whispered to the headstone, and for sharing him with us. Daniel had to turn away, tears streaming down his face, while Laura held him and the girls formed a protective circle around them both. That evening, Diane came over with Catherine's favorite meal, lasagna from the Italian place she'd loved, salad with too much dressing, garlic bread that was more butter than bread. They ate together, all of them, and they told Catherine stories until the sadness transformed into something gentler. She would have liked you, Diane told Laura as they cleaned up the kitchen. She would have appreciated how you don't try to erase her, how you let the girls keep their memories alive. I wouldn't want to erase her, Laura said simply. She's part of Daniel, part of the girls. She shaped the family I'm becoming part of. David shaped Maya the same way, Diane observed. Diane shots. You're both carrying your dead forward. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. Often the same thing. 2 weeks later, Daniel asked Laura to move in with him. Not because it was the next logical step, not because of some timeline he'd calculated, but because coming home to an empty house had started to feel wrong. Because Maya's toothbrush already lived in the bathroom and her butterfly books filled the shelves and her laughter belonged in the halls. Are you sure? Laura asked, clearly shocked. That's a big step. The girls have already reorganized the bedrooms to accommodate Maya. They've created a whole schedule for shared bathroom time and established a rotating system for picking movies. Daniel took her hands. They've been ready for months. I'm the one who's been slow to catch up. We're both slow. I've been waiting for you to ask because I was too scared to bring it up first. So that's a yes? That's a very enthusiastic yes. They told the children that night, expecting celebration, and got instead a presentation Emma had apparently been preparing for weeks, outlining the optimal arrangement of furniture, the fair distribution of closet space, and a proposed chore chart that accounted for 5 people instead of 4. How long have you been planning this? Daniel asked, slightly awed. Since the 3rd Saturday, Emma admitted. We knew it was inevitable. Nothing's inevitable, Laura said. You two are, Sophie corrected. You fit together, like puzzle pieces. Or butterflies and flowers, Maya added. They need each other. Moving day was chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture being rearranged, 5 females with very strong opinions about where everything should go. Daniel retreated to the garage after the third argument about bathroom organization, only to find Diane sitting on a storage box drinking coffee from a thermos. Hiding? She asked. Strategically regrouping. Catherine used to hide in here too when the girls got overwhelming. Diane smiled at the memory. She'd come out here and call me, talking through whatever was stressing her out. I miss her, Daniel said quietly. Even with Laura here, even being happy, I still miss her. Of course you do. You'll always miss her. Diane stood, putting a hand on his shoulder. But Daniel, she'd be so proud of you, of how you've kept living, how you've let yourself love again without forgetting her. That's exactly what she wanted for you. How do you know? Because she told me. The day before she died, she made me promise to make sure you kept living. She said grief would try to swallow you whole, and I needed to push you back toward life whenever you started disappearing. Diane's eyes were wet. Laura is you choosing life. This family you're building is you keeping your promise. Catherine would be so proud. Daniel pulled his mother-in-law into a hug, both of them crying in the garage while chaos continued in the house, and when they finally went back inside, they found Laura had organized everything into a system that somehow satisfied all 5 girls. How did you do that? Daniel asked, amazed. I teach second graders. This is nothing. That night, after the boxes were unpacked and the girls were asleep in their newly arranged rooms, Daniel and Laura sat on the back porch watching fireflies dance in the darkness. This is real now, Laura said softly. We're really doing this, building a family. Having second thoughts? Terrified thoughts, but not second thoughts. She leaned against his shoulder. I keep waiting for it to feel wrong, for the guilt to show up and tell me I'm betraying David's memory. But it doesn't come. I know what you mean. I felt guilty at first, like being happy with you meant I hadn't loved Catherine enough. But Diane helped me see that's not how love works. We can hold both things, the grief for who we lost and the joy for who we found. Laura was quiet for a long moment. Maya asked me last week if I thought her daddy would be happy for us, if he'd approve. What did you tell her? I told her yes, that David loved me enough to want me happy, even if that happiness came after he was gone. And I think that's true. I think he'd like you, Daniel. I think he'd trust you with his daughter. I hope so. Daniel kissed the top of her head. I'm trying my best to be worthy of that trust. You are. You really are. 3 months after moving in together, Daniel knew with sudden, absolute certainty that he wanted to marry Laura. Not to replace what he'd lost, not to create some idealized blended family, but because he'd fallen in love with a woman who understood his scars and showed him hers, who loved his daughters like her own, and let him love hers the same way. He called Diane first. I want to propose to Laura, he said without preamble. But I need to know if that's okay, if Catherine would be okay with it. Diane was quiet for so long Daniel thought they'd been disconnected. Then, do you love her? Yes. Does she make you happy? Yes. Do the girls love her? They adore her. Then Catherine would not only be okay with it, she'd be pushing you to hurry up and ask already. Diane laughed softly. Honey, Catherine wanted you to build a life after her. This is that life. Embrace it. I don't want to forget her. You won't. But you can honor her memory and build a future at the same time. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Next, he talked to the triplets. He gathered them in the living room on a Saturday morning when Laura had taken Maya to a butterfly exhibit, and he asked them how they'd feel about him marrying Laura. The girls exchanged one of their looks, having an entire conversation in seconds before Emma spoke. We've been wondering when you'd ask. Of course you have. Will Maya be our sister? Lily asked. Like, officially? If she wants to be, and if Laura says yes. She'll say yes, Sophie said with certainty. She loves you, we can tell. How? She looks at you the way Mom used to look at you in the videos, like you're the best thing she's ever seen, even when you're being boring. I'm not boring. Dad, you're an accountant, Emma said gently. It's okay. We love you anyway. Daniel laughed, pulling all 3 girls into his lap even though they were getting too big for it. So you're okay with this? With me marrying Laura, with Maya becoming your sister? We're more than okay, Emma said seriously. We're happy. We love Laura, and we love Maya, and we love that you're happy again. It doesn't mean I love your mom any less. We know. Sophie hugged him tighter. Mom would want this. She told us before she died that we needed to take care of you, and part of taking care of you is making sure you're not alone forever. When did she tell you that? You were only 6. The night before she died, Lily whispered. She called us into her hospital room one at a time and told us she loved us, and that we needed to be brave and take care of each other and you. She made us promise. Daniel's eyes burned. I didn't know that. We didn't want to make you sad. Emma wiped at her own tears. But she really did say it. She said you'd try to be strong for us, but we needed to be strong for you too, and that someday, when you were ready, we should help you find happiness again. Is that why you created the dating profile? 3 guilty nods. We were trying to keep our promise to Mom, Sophie explained. Maybe we did it wrong, but we were trying. Daniel held his daughters and cried, grieving and grateful in equal measure, understanding now that his journey toward Laura had been blessed by Catherine all along. He proposed 3 weeks later, not with grand gestures or public displays, but in their kitchen on a Tuesday night after the girls were asleep. Laura was loading the dishwasher, humming something off-key, and Daniel realized he wanted to watch her load dishwashers for the rest of his life. "Marry me," he said. Laura dropped a plate. Fortunately, it was plastic. "What?" "Marry me. Build this family officially. Let me love you and Maya for the rest of my life." Daniel pulled out the ring he'd been carrying for a week, waiting for the right moment. "I know it's complicated. I know we're both carrying people we've lost. But I love you, Laura. I love the family we've built, and I want to make it permanent." Laura was crying, hands over her mouth, the dishwasher forgotten. "Is that a yes?" Daniel asked, suddenly terrified. "Yes. Yes, absolutely yes." She threw her arms around him, and they stood in the kitchen kissing while water ran in the sink and dishes sat half-loaded, and upstairs 4 girls who'd probably been listening the whole time started cheering. They got married 6 months later in their backyard, surrounded by people who loved them. Diane walked Laura down the aisle. The triplets were bridesmaids. Maya was the flower girl, her butterfly wings integrated into her dress. It was small and perfect, and full of the kind of joy that comes from surviving the worst and choosing to try again anyway. During the vows, Daniel spoke not just to Laura, but to Maya too, promising to love her and protect her and be the father she needed. Laura did the same with the triplets, her voice breaking as she promised to honor Catherine's memory while building new memories together. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. At the reception, as Daniel danced with his new wife while their daughters ran wild with other children, he felt Catherine's presence like a blessing. Not haunting, not accusing, but approving, proud, happy that he'd kept his promise to really live. "What are you thinking about?" Laura asked, her head on his shoulder. "How I got here. How 3 8-year-olds catfishing me for their teacher led to this moment." Laura laughed. "Worst meet cute in history. Best outcome, though." "Best outcome," she agreed. That night, after the guests had left and the girls were asleep in various states of exhaustion, Daniel stood in the backyard looking at the stars. Laura joined him, slipping her hand into his. "We did it," she said softly. "We built something new without destroying what came before. We're still building it, every day." "I know, but Daniel, we made it work. 2 broken people, 4 complicated kids, 2 ghosts we'll always love, and somehow we made it work." Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the reality of this new life they'd created. It wasn't the life he'd imagined when he'd married Catherine. It wasn't the future he'd planned, but it was good and real and full of a love he'd thought he'd never feel again. "Thank you," he whispered, not sure if he was talking to Laura or Catherine or both. "Thank you for giving me another chance at this." Laura looked up at him, understanding everything he meant. "Thank you for being brave enough to take it." They stood together under the stars, 2 people who'd learned that hearts could break and heal and break again and still have room for new love. Their story wasn't traditional or simple or easy, but it was theirs, built from catastrophe and courage, from 3 scheming 8-year-olds and 1 impossible first date, from grief acknowledged and hope embraced. And as Daniel held his wife under the same stars that held Catherine's memory and David's love, he finally understood what it meant to really live. Not to forget the past, but to carry it forward. Not to replace what was lost, but to build something new alongside it. Not to choose between grief and joy, but to hold both with open hands and a full heart. The worst beginning had led to the most beautiful middle, and the future, uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility, was just beginning. The years that followed their wedding were everything Daniel had forgotten life could be. Loud and chaotic and full of the kind of ordinary magic that comes from raising 4 daughters who somehow managed to be both utterly different and completely united. Emma grew into a teenager with her mother's analytical mind and her father's quiet determination. Sophie developed an artistic vision that transformed their house into a constantly evolving gallery. Lily became the family's emotional compass, with an uncanny ability to know when anyone needed comfort, and Maya bloomed into a confident young woman whose butterfly obsession had evolved into a genuine passion for environmental science. They were a family, blended and complicated and absolutely real. But Daniel knew, the way parents always know, that nothing lasts forever. The girls were growing up, growing away, preparing to launch themselves into lives that wouldn't include daily dinners and movie nights and the comfortable chaos of a full house. The letter arrived on a Tuesday in March, 10 years after that disastrous first date at Romano's. Emma opened it at the breakfast table, her hands shaking, and when she screamed, the entire house came running. "I got in," she whispered, staring at the paper like it might disappear. "MIT. I got into MIT." The celebration was immediate and overwhelming. Laura crying, Maya jumping up and down, Daniel pulling Emma into a bone-crushing hug, while Sophie and Lily cheered. But underneath the joy, Daniel felt the first tremor of what was coming. His daughters were leaving. 2 days later, Sophie's letter arrived from the Rhode Island School of Design. Acceptance. Full scholarship. 3 days after that, Lily heard from Stanford. Yes, they wanted her for their psychology program. 3 daughters. 3 elite universities. 3 completely different directions. That night, after the initial excitement had faded and reality began to settle in, Daniel found the triplets sitting together in Emma's room, unusually quiet. "What's wrong?" he asked from the doorway. "You 3 just got into your dream schools." "They're all on different coasts," Emma said quietly. "We've never been apart, not for more than a few days." "I don't know how to be me without you 2, Sophie added, her voice cracking. "We've been together since before we were born." "What if we grow apart?" Lily whispered. "What if going to different schools means we stop being us?" Daniel sat down on the floor beside them, these 3 young women who still sometimes felt like the tiny babies he'd held in his arms after Catherine died. "You won't stop being you. Distance can't change what you are to each other." "How do you know?" Emma challenged, ever the skeptic. "Because love doesn't work that way. Your mom and her sister lived on opposite sides of the country for years, and they were still closer than most people who see each other every day." Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I'm not going to lie to you. It will be hard. You'll miss each other. You'll have experiences they're not part of. You'll grow in ways that surprise all of you." "That sounds terrible," Sophie said. "It sounds like life," Daniel corrected gently. "And here's the thing. You 3 have been taking care of each other since you were 8 years old. Since before that, really. You've been so focused on staying together, on being a unit, that maybe you haven't let yourselves figure out who you are separately." "We're triplets," Lily said, as if that explained everything. "You are. You always will be. But you're also 3 individual people with different dreams and different paths. And maybe it's time to explore those paths, even if it means being apart." Emma wiped at her eyes. "Mom would tell us to go, wouldn't she? Your mom would tell you that she didn't survive her pregnancy complications and die bringing you into this world just so you could play it safe." Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. "She'd tell you to be brave, to chase your dreams, to become the women you're meant to be, even if it's scary. Especially if it's scary." The girls were quiet for a long moment before Sophie spoke. "What if we need each other? Then you call, you video chat, you text, you get on planes." Daniel looked at each of them in turn. "But girls, you've been protecting each other, protecting me, trying to hold everything together since your mom died. Maybe it's time to let yourselves just be 18-year-olds who get to be selfish and ambitious and focused on your own dreams." That feels wrong, Lily said. That feels necessary, Daniel corrected. Over the next few weeks, the house buzzed with college preparation and the growing awareness that their family was about to fundamentally change. Maya, now 15, watched her sisters prepare to leave with a mixture of excitement for them and grief for herself. I'm going to be an only child, she said one evening, helping Emma pack. After years of having 3 sisters, I'm going back to being alone. You're not alone, Emma said, carefully folding a sweater. You have Mom and Daniel, and we'll visit. We'll call all the time. It won't be the same. No, Emma admitted. It won't be. But Maya, change doesn't always mean worse. Sometimes it just means different. You sound like a fortune cookie. Emma laughed and threw a pillow at her. I'm trying to be wise here. Let me have this moment. Laura found Daniel in the garage again, his refuge when emotions got too overwhelming. She sat beside him on the storage box that had become their unofficial therapy seat. They're really leaving, she said. I know. All 3 of them, at the same time. I know. The house is going to be so quiet. Daniel turned to look at his wife, seeing his own grief reflected in her eyes. We did our job too well. We raised them to be independent and brave, and now they're going to go be independent and brave somewhere else. I'm not ready. Me neither. But we don't get to be ready. We just have to let them go. Laura leaned against his shoulder. When did you get so wise about this? I'm not wise. I'm terrified. But I keep thinking about what Catherine told me before she died. That loving someone means wanting their happiness, even when it costs you yours. The girls being happy, being successful, becoming who they're meant to be, that's worth the cost of missing them. David used to say something similar, that real love means giving people wings, not building them cages. Smart man. The smartest. Laura was quiet for a moment. We're going to be okay, right? When they're gone and it's just us and Maya? We're going to be more than okay, Daniel said, with more confidence than he felt. We're going to figure out who we are as a couple without the chaos of 4 teenagers. We're going to have actual conversations that don't get interrupted 17 times. We're going to sleep past 7 on Saturdays. That sounds boring. That sounds peaceful. I'm going to miss the chaos. Me too. The weeks before departure accelerated with terrifying speed, shopping for dorm supplies, arguing about what could fit in a suitcase, tears over leaving childhood bedrooms behind. The girls tried to maintain normalcy, tried to pretend everything wasn't changing, but the weight of transition hung over everything. 2 nights before the triplets were scheduled to leave, Daniel called a family meeting. All 6 of them gathered in the living room, and he pulled out a box he'd been hiding in his closet for weeks. When your mom died, Daniel began, looking at the triplets, she left letters for each of you. She wrote them in the hospital, in the days before she passed, and she made me promise not to give them to you until you were about to leave home. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Sophie started crying immediately. Lily just stared at the box like it might explode. She knew? Emma whispered. She knew she was dying? She knew it was possible. The complications were serious, so she wrote these just in case. Daniel's hands shook as he pulled out 3 envelopes, each labeled in Catherine's familiar handwriting. I haven't read them. They're for you. He distributed the letters, then stood. Laura and I will give you privacy. Take all the time you need. In the kitchen, Daniel and Laura held each other while their daughters read words from a ghost, and when the girls finally emerged an hour later, their faces were blotchy and raw, but somehow lighter. She told us to go, Emma said quietly. She said she didn't raise us to play it safe, that she wanted us to chase our dreams, even if it meant being apart. She said she was proud of us, Sophie added, all of us, for being brave enough to build a life after she was gone. She said she'd always be with us, Lily finished, in our hearts, in our memories, in every choice we make. And she said she loved us enough to want us happy, even if happy meant leaving. Daniel felt tears streaming down his face, loving Catherine all over again for knowing exactly what their daughters would need to hear, exactly when they'd need to hear it. Can we read you what she wrote to all of us? Emma asked. At the end, she had a message for the whole family. Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. Emma cleared her throat and read, To my beautiful family, you are reading this because my daughters are leaving home. which means you've all survived my loss and built something beautiful together. I'm so proud of you, Daniel. Thank you for keeping your promise. Thank you for living, for loving again, for showing our girls that grief doesn't have to destroy everything. To Laura, thank you for loving my husband and my daughters, for making space for my memory while building your own place in their hearts. To Maya, thank you for being the sister my girls needed. And to my Emma, Sophie, and Lily, fly, my darlings. Fly as far and as high as you can. I'll be watching from wherever I am, cheering you on every step of the way. Love never dies. It just changes shape. Let it grow. Let it expand. Let it carry you forward. All my love always and forever, Mom. The silence that followed was profound and holy, and when Daniel finally looked up, he saw his entire family crying together, holding each other, honoring the woman who'd made all of this possible. She would have loved this family, Diane said from the doorway. No one had heard her arrive, but somehow her presence felt inevitable. All of you together, loving each other, keeping her memory alive while building something new. This is exactly what she wanted. I miss her, Emma said. We all do, Diane replied, and we always will. But look at what you've built from that loss. Look at this beautiful, complicated, perfect family. Departure day arrived with brutal finality. 3 different flights to 3 different cities, and Daniel insisted on driving each daughter to the airport personally, refusing to combine trips even though it meant 3 rounds of goodbye. Emma went first, her car packed with organizational systems and color-coded notebooks. At the airport, she tried to be stoic, tried to be the brave scientist who didn't cry at goodbyes. She failed spectacularly. I don't know how to do this, she sobbed into Daniel's shoulder. I don't know how to be Emma without Sophie and Lily. We've been a unit for 18 years. You've been Emma your whole life, Daniel said gently. Sophie and Lily enhanced that, but they didn't create it. You're brilliant and driven and analytical all on your own. What if I fail? Then you'll figure out how to succeed differently. That's what you do. Daniel pulled back to look at her. I love you, Emma Rose. Your mom would be so proud of who you've become. Take care of Sophie and Lily, Emma said. Make sure they're okay without me. I will, but they're stronger than you think. You all are. Sophie's goodbye 2 hours later was quieter but no less devastating. She clung to Laura, to Daniel, to Maya, trying to memorize the feel of family before she left it behind. Promise me nothing will change, she whispered. Promise me I'll come home and it'll all be the same. I can't promise that, Laura said honestly. Things will change. You'll change. We'll all change. But the love won't change. That's permanent. I'm scared. Being scared means you're doing something brave. Laura kissed her forehead. Go make beautiful things, Sophie Claire. The world needs your art. Lily's departure, scheduled for late evening, was the hardest because by then, the reality had fully set in. 2 sisters were already gone. The triplets were separated for the first time in their lives. I should have chosen a school closer to them, Lily said, her face pale. I should have gone to Berkeley, or somewhere near MIT. What was I thinking? You were thinking Stanford has the best psychology program in the country, Daniel reminded her. You were thinking about your dreams, your future, and Lily, that's exactly what you should have been thinking about. But we're supposed to be together. You'll always be together, just not geographically. Daniel took her hands. Lily-Ann, you are the heart of this family. You feel things deeply. You understand people. You make everyone around you better. Stanford is lucky to have you. I don't want to go. I know. Go anyway. The house felt cavernous when they returned home that night. Too quiet. Too empty. Too full of absence. Maya had retreated to her room, and Laura was crying in the kitchen, and Daniel stood in the hallway looking at 3 bedroom doors that wouldn't open to reveal his daughters. We did it, Laura said when he joined her. We raised them and loved them, and now they're gone. Not gone, just growing. Feels like gone. Daniel pulled her close, and they stood together in the too quiet kitchen, 2 parents learning what it meant to have an empty nest, to have done their job so well that their children no longer needed them in the same way. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. I'm at my dorm. It's terrifying and exciting, and I already miss everyone. Then Sophie. Rhode Island is beautiful. My roommate seems nice. I can't stop crying. Finally, Lily. California is too far from everyone I love, but the campus is amazing. Thank you for pushing me to go. Daniel showed the text to Laura, and she smiled through her tears. They're going to be okay. Better than okay. And we're going to be okay too. Eventually. The first few weeks were brutal. The girls called constantly, homesick and overwhelmed and desperate for the familiar. Daniel and Laura took turns being the strong ones, offering encouragement when they wanted to tell their daughters to come home, to give up on distant dreams, to return to the safety of family. But they didn't. They let their daughters struggle and grow and find their footing in new worlds. Maya thrived in the suddenly quieter house, no longer competing for attention with three older sisters. She flourished academically, started a butterfly conservation club at school, and spent long evenings talking with Daniel and Laura about college plans and dreams and fears. I'm not scared like they were, Maya said one night at dinner. About leaving someday, I mean. Watching them go showed me it's possible. That you can leave and still belong. You're braver than you think, Laura told her daughter. I learned from the best. Maya looked between her parents. All of you. My dad, you two, the girls. Everyone taught me that family isn't about being in the same place. It's about carrying each other in your heart. Daniel felt something settle in his chest, some final piece of healing clicking into place. They'd done it. They'd built a family from catastrophe, raised daughters who knew how to love and let go, created a home that could expand and contract without breaking. The first Thanksgiving with the girls' home was chaos and joy, and proof that distance hadn't changed anything fundamental. Emma arrived with organizational charts for optimizing turkey preparation. Sophie brought handmade gifts for everyone, and Lily spent the first hour just hugging people and crying happy tears. This is weird, Emma observed, watching her sisters interact. We're the same, but different. You're growing, Daniel said. That's supposed to feel weird. I kind of like it, Sophie admitted. I missed you both so much, but I also like having my own things, my own friends, my own life. Me too, Lily agreed. Is that bad? That's exactly right, Laura assured them. You're becoming yourselves. That's the whole point. Over dinner, crowded around a table that barely fit all six of them, they shared stories from their separate lives, Emma's research project, Sophie's first art show, Lily's psychology experiment, Maya's environmental activism. The conversation was loud and overlapping and absolutely perfect. Later, after the girls had gone to bed, still insisting on sleeping in Emma's room together, old habits dying hard, Daniel and Laura cleaned up the kitchen in comfortable silence. We did good, Laura said finally. We did great. They're going to be okay. Better than okay. They're going to change the world, each in their own way. And we get to watch. Laura leaned against the counter. Daniel, do you ever think about that first night at Romano's? About how catastrophic it was? All the time. Do you ever wish it had gone differently? Daniel considered the question, thinking about everything that had come from that disaster, the growth, the love, the family they'd built from broken pieces. Not for a second. That catastrophe led to this, to us, to them. I wouldn't change any of it. Not even the hiding behind the plant part? Especially not that part. That's going to be a legendary family story someday. 5 years later, Daniel stood in a different restaurant, this one significantly nicer than Romano's, preparing to renew vows with the woman he'd accidentally fallen in love with. The girls were all there. Emma with her PhD almost complete, Sophie with her art featured in galleries across the country, Lily finishing her doctorate in psychology, Maya thriving at Cornell studying environmental science. And beside them, new additions to the family. Emma's fiancé, Sophie's partner, relationships that had formed in the years of separation and growth. Nervous? Diane asked, materializing at his elbow the way she always did at important moments. Strangely not, Daniel admitted. This feels right, celebrating how far we've come. Catherine would be so proud, Diane said, her eyes scanning the room. Look at what you built from grief. Look at these beautiful young women, these relationships, this family. We had help. You, the girls, catastrophically bad timing, and 3 8-year-old matchmakers. Diane laughed. Best worst first date in history. The ceremony was simple and perfect. Daniel and Laura stood before their family and friends, their daughters surrounding them, and spoke vows that honored both their past and their present. 10 years ago, Daniel began, I was a man who'd forgotten how to live. I was surviving, going through motions, trying to be enough for 3 daughters who needed more than I knew how to give. And then those 3 daughters, in their infinite wisdom and complete lack of boundaries, created a dating profile and matched me with a woman I'd never met. Laughter rippled through the crowd. That woman, Daniel continued, looking at Laura, taught me that hearts can break and heal without choosing one or the other, that you can honor the dead while celebrating the living, that loving someone new doesn't erase loving someone lost. Laura, you didn't fix me. You walked beside me while I learned to fix myself. You love my daughters as your own. You made space for Catherine's memory in our home. You built something beautiful from catastrophe, and I am so grateful every single day that 3 8-year-olds thought they knew better than I did about what I needed. He turned to look at the triplets, now 28 and brilliant, and everything he and Catherine had hoped they'd become. Because they were right. They saw what I couldn't see, that surviving wasn't enough, that I needed to really live. Thank you, girls, for being brave enough to push me toward life, even if your methods were questionable. Emma grinned. We stand by our choices. Laura's vows were equally emotional, thanking David's memory for shaping the woman she'd become, thanking Daniel for showing her that love could bloom in unexpected places, thanking all 4 girls for teaching her that family was something you built, not something that just happened. We started as a disaster, Laura concluded. An ambush date orchestrated by children, a humiliation followed by honesty, grief meeting grief in a rainy parking lot. And from that disaster, we built this, a family that chose each other, that honors its dead while celebrating its living, that knows love doesn't run out, it just expands. They kissed to thunderous applause, and as they turned to face their family, Daniel felt Catherine's presence like a benediction. She was there in Emma's analytical smile, Sophie's artistic soul, Lily's emotional intelligence. She was there in the family they'd built, in the love they'd created, in the life he'd chosen to really live. That night, as the celebration wound down and their daughters drifted off to continue their own lives, Daniel found himself in the same spot where he'd proposed all those years ago, the kitchen with Laura loading the dishwasher, humming off-key. What are you thinking about? Laura asked, noticing him watching her. How we got here. How 3 scheming 8-year-olds with a dating app led to this moment. Still the worst meet-cute in history? Still the best outcome. Laura turned off the water and crossed to him, taking his hands. Do you think they planned all this, Catherine and David? Do you think they somehow orchestrated it from wherever they are? I think they loved us enough to want us happy, even if that happiness came after they were gone. Whether they planned it or just blessed it, I'm grateful. Me too. They stood together in the quiet kitchen, 2 people who'd learned that the worst disasters sometimes created the most beautiful lives, that broken hearts could heal without forgetting, that love was infinite and expandable and powerful enough to bridge the gap between grief and joy. Outside, the city hummed with life continuing, and somewhere in that city, 3 young women who'd once been terrified 8-year-olds were living the brave, bold lives their mothers had wanted for them. They were changing the world in small and large ways, carrying forward the lessons learned from love and loss, building their own families and futures. And in a college dorm across the country, Maya was probably reorganizing someone's closet and talking about butterflies, carrying forward both her father's gentle spirit and her mother's strength, proof that families could be built and rebuilt, that love never really ended. It just changed shape. Daniel pulled Laura close, breathing in the reality of this life they'd created, imperfect and complicated and absolutely beautiful. Thank you, he whispered, not sure if he was talking to Laura or Catherine or the universe that had somehow brought all these broken pieces together. Thank you, Laura whispered back, understanding everything he meant. And somewhere, in memory or imagination or the space between, Daniel felt both Catherine and David's approval settle over them like a blessing. Their story, the one that had started with catastrophe and evolved through courage, was complete. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and rich and full of the kind of love that survived everything. The girls had been right all along. Sometimes the worst plans created the most beautiful lives. Sometimes disaster was just the beginning of something extraordinary. Sometimes 3 8-year-olds knew exactly what their father needed, even when he didn't. Sometimes love was patient enough to wait for grief to make room. Sometimes broken people found each other and built something whole. Sometimes, against all odds, life gave you exactly what you needed, disguised as everything you thought you didn't want. And sometimes, the story that started with hiding behind a restaurant plant ended with a family that knew how to hold grief and joy in the same heart, how to honor the past while embracing the future, how to really live instead of just survive. This was that story. And it was, in every possible way, complete.